Hey gang, it's JC and this is the Daily Dose for Tuesday, May 31st, 2011, a combined venture with Mind Active in beautiful downtown Brentwood. We have great archives at the top of the page, and then of course eye candy along the bottom. We'll get into that a little bit later. We are back outside. Feels wonderful to be outside. 27 years here in St. Louis. If this wasn't the worst spring in my 27 years in St. Louis, then I don't know what was, because March, April, and May, which can be very pleasant months around these parts, were just absolutely awful. And now the big payoff is here, temperatures in the 90s, and they're saying that next weekend we could be pushing 100 degrees. So it's like somebody threw a master switch. They're like, oh, it's Memorial Day? Go ahead, throw that switch and turn it into summer. So maybe we're getting into one of those situations where we're not going to have a change of the seasons, a gradual change from winter to spring to summer. It's just going to go from crap to beautiful. Maybe that's what we're looking at. So Anna had an encounter with a raccoon yesterday. This is very, very bizarre. If you look behind here, which I hope you don't do, you should be on my property. But if you look back there, I got a tree and these two raccoons live up there. And the raccoons were behind the pool yesterday. I came around the corner to work on the pump, and they were both looking at me. And it was just like we stared at each other for about 15 seconds. Finally, the mother grabbed the baby and just took off. There were people around the corner and down the street had a raccoon problem about 3 years ago, and they insisted the raccoon chewed a hole this big in the roof of their garage, and then they couldn't get out of the garage. So I'm trying to get these raccoons out of here. I've heard about traps and all sorts of stuff, but we got to do something. It was just very, very bizarre. Yesterday, by the way, Memorial Day, at one point we had 4 babies under the age of 2, 4 babies all under the age of 2, all in the water at the same time. Yeah. Very relaxing time. Okay, what do we got here? John McCain said Sarah Palin can win the presidency in 2012. He also said that Betty Grable had great gams, that Red Skelton is just a knee slapper, and he made some comment about where's the nurse with my banana pudding. A car sponsored by Justin Timberlake won the Indianapolis 500 race over the weekend. Meanwhile, former NSYNC member Joey Fatone's Buick LeSabre broke down on the freeway. Jeff Conaway has died, the guy from Taxi. John Travolta issued a statement paying tribute to his old buddy. Dr. Drew issued a statement thanking him for the repeat business. Just a couple of days now since the big finale of American Idol, and J-Lo is back in the news. Apparently, Jennifer Lopez's first husband has some sort of tape of the two of them. Now, it says here it may or may not contain nudity, but apparently he's gotten a judge to agree that this tape can now be released to the public. If there's no nudity, we don't really care, do we? The Hangover sequel made $137 million in its first 5 days of release and contributed to the best Memorial Day weekend box office of all time. There is no accounting for the poor taste of the American movie-going public. Now, Cameron Diaz shows up someplace with bigger boobs. It is because Alex Rodriguez apparently is putting some pressure on her to get implants. You'll remember that Kate Hudson from the Itty Bitty Titty Committee also just all of a sudden started walking around, and people were going, hey, where'd those come from? Well, she was dating Alex Rodriguez, and so now they're saying that Cameron Diaz could be next. Interesting if you can talk a woman into that. You would think that if it's just some, waitress in a cocktail bar, like one of Tiger Woods' hoes, that's one thing. Although he seemed to like him with already big boobs, so maybe that's a whole other story. But these are successful actresses worth millions of dollars, and Alex Rodriguez is talking them into permanently altering their bodies, and it's very, very interesting. Jose Canseco, one of the Bash brothers, along with Mark McGuire. So Canseco has made the news, obviously, in the last few years because he sort of blew the whistle on the whole steroids thing. And you have to remember that, when a crazy person starts talking, sometimes you have to remind yourself that not every single thing they say is crazy. But then they go back to being crazy, and it reminds you how much fun they are, how much more fun they are when they're crazy. So apparently, Jose Canseco has got this thing for Lady Gaga, and he apparently is not going to give up until she agrees to marry him. He just started tweeting his ass off the other day. I need a partner and companion. I'm at Buffalo Wild Wings, still looking for the next Miss X Canseco. That really turns women on when you tweet out of Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm looking for an exorcism from a Christian girl. Can you handle it? Come into the dark side. I will be waiting for you. I'm in Yuma, Arizona, Lady Gaga. Come to Yuma, Arizona. I'm surprised she hasn't already started packing. Jose's been married twice. His first marriage only lasted 2 years, ended in a domestic violence accusation. He met his second wife when she was working as a Hooters waitress. That lasted 3 years. He briefly dated Madonna back in 1992. So if Lady Gaga finally caves in and decides to go with him, she's going to be imitating Madonna yet again. Americans tired of 3D movies. Apparently there are big hits overseas, though. In Canada, a candidate for Parliament had a scandal this weekend when an extreme close-up, full frontal, you know what, the full Monty, surfaced on his Twitter feed. Okay, so now, again, this guy is a candidate for Parliament, and his junk shows up on his Twitter feed. So what's his excuse? Of course. He says the phone was in his pocket and must have accidentally photographed his junk and then accidentally uploaded it to Twitter. We got to have an award for this guy because this is the most amazing thing. Even if I was thinking that, well, maybe I could say this. Somebody would have talked me out of it, or I would have thought about it and said, well, I can't say that. People will think I'm insane. No big surprise here. New survey found that a woman is more than twice as likely to argue in a car than she is to have sexual relations in a car. 30% of women have gotten it on in a car versus 63% who have argued in one. 10% of men and 8% of women have dumped someone in a car. What do? Just push them out, slow it down to about 30, and then, I don't know. I'm always surprised at how little you have to do to get arrested. In Florida, a 49-year-old woman gets into an argument with her male roommate. It escalated. She ended up throwing a stick of butter at him. It hit him in the left leg. A little butter got on his ankle. Woman was arrested for misdemeanor battery with butter. We were talking about Sarah Palin the other day. She's going to run for president, probably. So I've been working on some campaign slogans. How do you like these? Sarah Palin, knowledge is overrated. Sarah Palin, completely free of old man smell since December of 2008. How about this? Sarah Palin, Mitt Romney was born in Kenya. How about Sarah Palin, fire in the belly, helium in the head. And how about this one? Sarah Palin, if you don't like me, I can always quit halfway through. It was on this date in 1976, The Who headlined at the Charlton Athletic Grounds in England and put their name into the Guinness Book of World Records as the loudest ever rock band. The set measured 120 decibels. That's as loud as a gunshot or a motorcycle. And you have to know that right here in St. Louis, we have a connection to The Who and to this event and to everything else that's going on in rock and roll music really in about the last 30, 35 years, because right there in Marissa, Illinois, a guy that you used to see on television on Fox 2 is the Gadget Guy, Bob Heil. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This guy developed all sorts of ways to push rock and roll sound, because what happened primarily in the late 60s and early 70s, you had these bands like the Grateful Dead and The Who, and they were playing to relatively small rooms. And they're like, look, we can sell 70,000 seat stadiums out, but we just don't have any way to push that amount of sound. So we can sell the tickets, but we can't get the sound out there. And along comes Bob Heil right here across the river in Illinois, who had developed all these different sort of microphones and all sorts of different, ways of pushing rock and roll sound to levels that had never really been experienced before. And Bob is a great guy. We have him on the air periodically. I think it's probably time for another visit from Bob Heil. So we'll plan that sometime very soon on the Big 550 KTRS. All right, birthdaying today is Chris Elliott. I laughed my ass off at this guy on Letterman when he did the regulator guy and the guy under the seats and stuff like that. A lot of you laughed at him, and there's something about Mary. It was very funny in Groundhog Day. It didn't have a lot to do with the scenes he was in. He was very, very good in. And again, it's a tremendous pedigree here, because Chris Elliott, just one of these unrestrained comedians and comics. The guy apparently just will do almost anything to get a laugh. His father, one half of the famous comedy team of Bob and Ray, who were just so understatedly funny. They were just such funny guys. So they were around in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and then Chris Elliott comes around in the 80s and 90s on Letterman. And as I mentioned, that pedigree, if you've been watching Saturday Night Live, you've been seeing Abby Elliott who is the daughter of Chris Elliott and the granddaughter of Bob Elliott from Bob and Ray. So happy birthday to Chris Elliott today, 51, and just a great comedic family. All right, JC's Eye Candy today is just an amazing story. This is one of those things that just seems to happen to me all the time. So last week we get into this big long conversation about Eddie Albert from Green Acres and about how funny he was in the original version of The Heartbreak Kid. They made a remake of this thing a couple of years ago with Ben Stiller. It was awful. You go back to the original that was made in the early 1970s with Charles Grodin and Sybil Shepherd, and Eddie Albert is the father, and he's just fabulous in it. He also played the warden in the original version of The Longest Yard. Again, they made a crappy remake of that with Adam Sandler a couple of years ago, but the original with Burt Reynolds, Eddie Albert was just fabulous in it. So we're talking about Eddie Albert and how funny he was on Green Acres, and then the subject of a movie from 1984 by the name of Dreamscape comes up. And I just had very, very sketchy recollection of it, but I remember that Eddie Albert played the president in the movie. Dennis Quaid is in the movie and stuff like that. Well, that's last week. Obscure movie from 1984 with Eddie Albert. So what happens? Over the weekend, the damn movie is on cable and satellite. And so I'm watching it, and I remember a good chunk of the movie about Dennis Quaid is able to get into people's dreams and then warn them about things that are going to happen to them that might present danger. Okay, so I'm watching this whole thing, and who shows up but George Wendt from Cheers, Chicago-born actor, but as you'll see on Eye Candy, look right below what you're looking at right now. In the movie, George Wendt is wearing a St. Louis Cardinals hat. And I can't for the life of me figure out why. Because he was born and raised in Chicago and went to school in Kansas City, but for some reason he's wearing a Cardinal hat. But it's amazing to see it. I'd totally forgotten about that. So that's our picture on Eye Candy. You can look at it right now. All right, that's it. JC's Daily Dose for Tuesday, May 31st, 2011. A combined venture with Mind Active in beautiful downtown Brentwood. Hey, time to do a little twisting by the pool. In the meantime, we've beaten this one to death. Have a good one. See you later. Bye.